I want to begin by extending my tremendous thanks to HaRav of the Goldberg, Rav Agon of the Goldberger, HaRav Agon, Rabbi Deal, Ruvain, Crystal, for everything that they did for this evening, for the Shabbos that preceded this evening, for everything that they've done in the past. Every detail was so carefully crafted. They didn't overlook anything, and they went beyond anything that I could imagine. I want to thank my colleague, HaRav Agon, Rav Moshe Spiro, Ben Yedid. I don't know if you know this, but his father was a classmate of mine too many years ago to count. But he's a Gaon, and his contribution to the Kollel is enormous. And I am so grateful that he is at the helm now, and that he will be the one to lead the Kollel into the next Tekufa, and he will do a superb and an amazing job. I want to thank Yedidi Chavivi Achi V'Rei HaRav Agon V'Moshe Tovia Alif, who surprised us with his presence. It was such a special matana to us that he was here, and thank you very much for being here. And I must say that all of the tributes, all of the accolades, all of the exaggerations about my wife and myself are at least half true. The other half. I want to thank Yedidi V'Chavivi, my mechutin, my dear mechutin, Rav Chaim Yeshua Hoberman, who came with his Rebbitzin to be here tonight and to deliver his beautiful presentation. Thank you so mujust for being here. Just your presence alone, besides your words, was so meaningful to us. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank all the Neshei HaKollel for everything that they've done for the entire weekend. At the helm, I understand, was Mrs. Lichtman. Also, Mrs. Goldberger and Mrs. Crystal, for everything you did, and all the Neshei HaKollel who volunteered, and everyone volunteered. Thank you all for everything that you've done. And I want to thank Mrs. Delmore for always being there, for our Kehillah, for our institution, for all the institutions. And I do want to say that I want to thank this Kehillah. Perhaps, it is not perhaps, but you thank me, but I must say that we have a tremendous thanks to this Kehillah for that they've done for us personally, for what they've done for us, for the Kollel, for the Beis Yaakov. Over the last 26 years, we have received so much support and so much kindness and so much goodness and so much camaraderie and such wonderful feelings that this Kehillah is really, truly a mishpacha to us, and we feel that way, and we will always feel that way in Mitzvah Hashem. I want to thank my own children as well. We had many surprises. We had two daughters who came from Eretz Yisrael, besides the ones that came from locally from the East Coast, and our three sons came in. Thank you all for being here. We never wanted you to come, actually, but now that you're here, it's such a pleasure to be able to share these moments with you. And as mentioned before by Rabbi Hoberman, I've said this in the past, I've had an opportunity to say this in the past, but I want to repeat it again, that particularly during my episode with Corona, this Kehillah was was there for me. This Kehila davened for me. They had shiurim. They sponsored all different types of Gimilas Chasadim and various types of activities for the schus of my recovery. And I thank everybody in this Kehila for that. Thank you very much. I would like to share with you a story that I heard from my brother. My brother is the Rav of the Aguda Yishol in Flatbush of Midwood. And my brother was my younger brother, Reb David, who was one of the founding members of the community kollel in Chicago. And when they started the kollel in Chicago, the kollel in Chicago overturned the city. It became a city of Torah like no one could imagine. And at the inauguration of the kollel, of the original kollel, they had the distinct honor to have Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky come and speak to them. And my brother told me the drasha of the sermon that Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky gave at that time, and I want to share that with you. He said the following: in Parshas Kisisa, Hashem chooses Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur to be the architect of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. The Mishkan was given to us was allowed for us to build as an atonement for the sin of the golden calf. And Hashem forgave us, showed His forgiveness by instructing us to build that Mishkan. So the Das Kenim Mibalataisis asked the question: rarely is it that a person is introduced in the Torah that you introduce him by his father and his grandfather. Usually the introduction is the father, the person and his father, which in this case would have been Betzalel ben Uri, as it was with Betzalel's assistant, Eliyav ben Achisamach. It didn't go to the generation before. But when Betzalel is introduced, he is introduced as Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur, going back 2 generations. So the Das Kein about Tosha says that since Betzalel is being charged now with the building of the Mishkan, of that tabernacle, which will atone for the sin of the ego, so his grandfather Hur is also mentioned, because Hur died because he refused the request of the people to build that ego. He refused to do it, and they actually killed him. And therefore, when we're building the ego, we're reminding ourselves that his grandfather gave up his life so that there shouldn't have been an ego. So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said it goes a step further than that. It means that we think, when we look at Hur, who tragically died because he refused to build that ego, we think that his life was a tragedy. He didn't accomplish what he could have accomplished. Certainly, on the spiritual level, a person who dies al Kiddush Hashem automatically has enormous advancement in eternity, in the Olam HaEmes. But in this world, his life came to it was cut short. And it was a life that could have accomplished so much more and was cut short. It's a tragic ending to his life, which it was. But said Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky that whatever a person does to further Yiddishkeit, to further Torah, to further mitzvahs, it doesn't go to waste. And even though he may have died, but the fact that he gave up his life so that there shouldn't be an ego, when it came time to atone for that ego, it was his grandson who was chosen specifically because he was the grandson of Hur, to build that Mishkan to atone for the ego. So even though it appears to us that there was no continuity in his life, but that continuity did continue in ways that we didn't even know about, in ways that we couldn't even see ourselves. But the Rebbeinu Shalom took this chusim that he had and he invested them in his grandchildren, his grandchild, to build the Mishkan. Said Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, there's a group of young Talmidei Chachamim who are coming, at that time, it was about 1980, around 1980, who are coming from Lakewood to found the Chicago Community College, Zichron Shner. Now, he said, let me give you a little bit of a history about Chicago. In the year 1900, the Chicago community, which I think was based on the south side of Chicago at the time, that was the Jewish section of Chicago, they brought in a European Rav to be the Rav HaKollel, the chief rabbi of Chicago. That was a new concept in America. In Europe, every kehillah had a chief rabbi. But in America, that was not the case. And people came from all different communities, all different countries, and they all lived together, but each one had their own shul, each one had their own shtibel, their own beis medrash. And it wasn't unified under one individual. So in the late 1800s, there was an endeavor to create a kehillah as it had been in Europe, and they did it in two kehillahs. One was New York City, or the Lower East Side. They brought Rabbi Yaakov Yosef from Vilna to be the Rav of the Lower East Side. And they brought Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker to be he was from Slutsk, to be the Rav in Chicago. Both of them suffered enormously. Each one of them tried to crack down on the situation of kashrus. That was a big thing at the time. The mafia had their hand in all the slaughtering houses, and they tried to better the situation. Rabbi Yaakov Yosef suffered a tremendous aggravation, eventually had a stroke, and he lived out his life with terrible regret. In 1900, Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker came to Chicago. In Chicago, too, he tried to follow that example of creating shechita, of creating an educational system, of building up Yiddishkeit, which was faltering in America. And he tried to strengthen the kehillah. One day, in the middle of his drasha on Shabbos, an individual got up in the back of the shul and took a shot at him. He missed him. I will tell you, he was not a good friend of Gregory Lifshitz. If he had been a good friend of Gregory Lifshitz, he would have hit his mark. But he missed him. And at that point, it was Shabbos. He ran home, packed up his bags, left on Shabbos, went to Eretz Yisrael, to Tzfas. Because the mafia, which had the organized crime, which was so strong in Chicago at that time, was not going to allow the Ridvaz, Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker, to make any improvements in Shechita. So said Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, you would think that Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker's years in Chicago went to waste. Nothing was accomplished. However, said Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, let me tell you the background of Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker. Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker was the Rav of Slutsk in what today is Belarus. He approached the Slobodka yeshiva at that time, with the preeminent yeshiva in the world, and he came to the altar of Slobodka, the one who ran the yeshiva. We could call him, he was the mashgiach, but we call him the Rosh Yeshiva. And he came to the altar of Slobodka, and he says, give me 10 of your Talmidim. I want to start a yeshiva in my city of Slutsk. So he took 10 of his best Talmidim and sent them to Slutsk. And the one who led that group was Rabbi Zalman Meltzer. And that yeshiva was an outgrowth of the efforts of Rabbi Yaakov Dov Slutzker, who started yeshiva, and then that yeshiva after World War I moved to Kletsk. The son-in-law of Rabbi Zalman Meltzer, who was Rabbi Aaron Kotler, he took over the yeshiva. That yeshiva, Rabbi Aaron Kotler, eventually was transferred to Lakewood, New Jersey. Lakewood, New Jersey now, around 1980, was sending a group of 10 Talmidim to Chicago. So you think that Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker's efforts went to waste. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, just like Chur's efforts did not go to waste, Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker's efforts did not go to waste. And as a result of those efforts, which seem to have failed, and by every indication they failed, but in Shemayim, in heaven, the Rebbeinu Shem held on to all the efforts that were expended by Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker. And 80 years later, there comes back a koilo, which can be traced back to Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker's invitation of the yeshiva in Slutzk, which transferred to Kletsk, which transferred to Lakewood, and now is entering into Chicago. It's all a result of the efforts, the initial efforts of Rabbi Yaakov David Slutzker. This was his drasha. I would like to say that Kanai Nahara, the kollel has had tremendous success in building the community, but that success is not to be understood in and of itself. Everything lies on the shoulders of those that preceded us. And this is a kehillah that had a tremendous desire for growth, for achieving higher levels of Yiddishkeit, for strengthening Yiddishkeit, strengthening chinuch, strengthening the shul, strengthening every aspect of Yiddishkeit. This was a kehillah that yearned to grow. And there were many individuals over the years. In fact, this past Adar was the 100th yard side of the first European Rav of Minneapolis, with Rav Moshe Zilber, who died in 1925, one of the great European Rabbanim in America. And this kehillah had Rabbanim throughout the years, who tried to accomplish many things. And when Rav Moshe Tov invited us to come and start the kollel, it was on the shoulders of so many individuals, some of them who did accomplish, some of them who may not have, whose accomplishments could not be measured or seen, but nevertheless, everyone who put efforts into creating a kehillah, those efforts did not go to waste. And we, the kollel, came on the shoulders of all those people. I'll tell you a story. I wasn't going to say it, but I might as well say it. This was not the first community that I came to try out to be a Rosh Kollel. I tried out in a number of different communities. I came to, I will not name the name of the community, but one of the communities I went to, which today has a thriving kollel also. No, I'm sorry, this is the one that doesn't have a thriving kollel. So that community, they had about 4 Rabbanim who sat down with me, and they said, Rabbi, tell us what you're going to do to make our community better. What are you going to do for us? I said, when a kollel comes to a community, it changes the whole Yiddishkeit in the community. Everything in the community gets better. The kashrus gets better. The mikveh gets better. The HaRav gets better. The shuls get better. Everything gets better. Everything is better. So one of the rabbis spoke up and said, Rabbi, he says, we're not looking to get better. We want more people buying from the kosher bakery. That's what we want. We want more people coming into buy. That community did bring in a kollel eventually, but that kollel really it wasn't unable to really achieve what other kollel could have achieved, because the situation in that city was that they were not interested in growing. This kehillah, by contrast, is a kehillah that wanted to grow. They wanted to grow, and they did, and there was always a tremendous feeling of wanting to go higher and higher and higher. And when the kollel came in, we hit the ground running, because they were anticipating us. Rabbi Leaf he talked to the kehillah and charged them up before we even got there that they were anticipating our coming in. It was like when we finally arrived, they came to the, as we saw in the I don't know if you recognize what was going on in that video, but 200 people came to the airport to welcome the kollel when they came in. And then Rabbi Chesel Greenberg took over, and Mordechai Klassi took over another shul, and the other shul. And Baruch Hashem is a kehillah that wants to grow and always wanted to grow. I will tell you another thing that happened at my initial meeting with the Balabatim of this kehillah. They asked me the same question: what do you envision happening in 10 years, 20 years, when the kollel will be here for that period of time? Well, how do you envision the community to look like at that time? I said at the time, I have no idea what it's going to look like. But I will tell you this, that when a kollel comes to town, there is tremendous bracha in every aspect of the kehillah. And everything you will witness tremendous growth, tremendous bracha. Things that you can't even imagine today will occur over that period of time, and we can't know and we can't measure what will be, but there will be enormous growth. And today, Baruch Hashem, the kehillah that we are sadly they tell us we can still change our minds. The kehillah that we are sadly leaving is such a kehillah, a beautiful kehillah. May the Ribbon Shalom give you bracha and hatzlacha, and the kollel Mitzvah will continue under the wonderful guidance of Rav Victor Goldberg and Rav Adil Ruvain Crystal, and with the superb and incredible leadership of the Rosh Kollel, Rav Moshe Spiro, Yedid Ben Yedid. May you all continue to have tremendous nachas in your mishpachas, tremendous growth in Yiddishkeit, and may you all be zeichet to be ma'aver kvod Shemayim and to witness the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu.